she walked onto the X Factor UK stage with a calm that surprised even herself. Her footsteps steady, though her heart was racing faster than she wanted to admit. The lights were brighter than anything she had ever stood under before, far from the familiar glow of classroom, windows, and fluorescent bulbs. And as she took her place at the center of the stage, microphone resting gently in her hands, she felt the weight of years pressing quietly against her chest. Years of teaching, of routine, of responsibility, and of a dream she had learned to whisper instead of shout. When she introduced herself as a teacher, a soft murmur passed through the audience. Not cruel, not dismissive, just neutral, the sound people make when they file someone neatly into a box. Teacher, reliable, respectable, ordinary, the kind of label that rarely hints at surprise, and she noticed it, but she didn't let it shake her, because she had lived with that assumption for most of her life, smiling politely as people praised her for choosing stability over passion, as if the two could never exist in the same heart. She spoke about her students, about long days filled with lessons and patience, about evenings spent preparing for tomorrow while humming melodies she never shared out loud, her voice gentle but steady. And as she talked, Simon Cowell listened with his usual unreadable expression, arms crossed, eyes focused, a posture that had intimidated countless hopefuls before her, yet she stood there grounded, knowing that whatever happened next, she had already crossed the hardest line, the one between dreaming and daring. The music began softly, a simple introduction that felt like a deep breath, and as she sang the first note, something shifted in the room, not dramatically, not all at once, but subtly, like a ripple spreading across still water. The sound was controlled, warm, confident, and instantly attention grabbing, heads lifted, whispers stopped, phone studied, because her voice carried a sincerity that couldn't be taught, a tone shaped by experience, restrained and quiet, longing. As she moved through the opening lines, her nerves began to fade, replaced by a sense of familiarity. This was her space now, not the stage itself, but the music, the place where she had always felt most honest, most alive. And with each lyric she sang, the years she spent hiding this part of herself seemed to dissolve, revealing a performer who had been waiting patiently behind lesson plans and chalk dust. Her posture changed almost without her realizing it, shoulders straightening, chin lifting, slightly, confidence blooming as the audience leaned in closer, drawn not by spectacle, but by authenticity. Because she wasn't trying to impress, she was expressing, and there is a powerful difference between the two. One seeks approval, the other commands attention simply by being true. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his interest visibly sparked, the skeptical distance replaced by focus, and that small shift sent a quiet signal through the room. When Simon listens, something special is happening, and as her voice grew stronger, richer, filling the auditorium with ease, it became clear that this was not a hobbyist stepping into the spotlight. This was a natural vocalist, with instinct, control, and emotional intelligence. The song built, gradually giving her space to show, restrain before power. And when she reached the first big note, she delivered it effortlessly, not forcing it, not overreaching, but placing it perfectly. The sound soaring above the music and settling deep into the audience, drawing gasps, spontaneous applause, and widened eyes. Because moments like that cannot be planned. They arrive when preparation meets courage. She closed her eyes briefly as she sang, allowing herself to fully feel the moment, the fear, the joy, the release, and in that brief pause, the years she spent telling herself she was just a teacher felt distant, irrelevant, replaced by the undeniable truth that she was an artist who had simply taken a longer road to the stage. The audience reacted instinctively, clapping mid-performance, cheering as if to encourage her further. And she responded by giving them more, not louder, not flashier, but deeper, letting emotion guide her, phrasing, letting vulnerability color her tone. transforming the song into a story that felt personal, even to those hearing it for the first time. As the performance continued, it became clear that her strength wasn't just technical, it was emotional. She sang with the understanding of someone who had lived life fully, who had known compromise, patience, sacrifice, and quiet. Perseverance and that depth resonated powerfully because great singers don't just hit notes, they tell truths. Simon Cowell shook his head, slightly in disbelief, a small smile forming as he watched her command the stage, and in that moment, the narrative shifted completely. She was no longer a teacher trying her luck. She was a serious contender, someone who demanded respect simply by opening her mouth and letting her voice speak for itself. When the song reached its climax, she didn't hold back, her voice rising confidently, filling every corner of the auditorium. Strong, clear, unwavering, the kind of sound that sends chills through a room, the kind that makes people glance at each other with wide eyes, silently acknowledging that they are witnessing something rare. The final note rang out, sustained, controlled, and perfectly placed, lingering in the air long after the music stopped, and for a heartbeat. There was silence, a stunned, collective pause, as the audience processed what they had just experienced before the room erupted into applause, cheers, and a standing ovation that seemed to come from every direction at once. She stood there, breathing deeply, eyes listening, hands trembling slightly as she lowered the microphone, overwhelmed not by pride, but by relief that she had finally allowed herself to be seen, that the voice she had protected for so long had been received with open arms. Simon Cowell stood up, clapping with genuine admiration, his expression a mixture of surprise and respect. And when he spoke, his words were direct, honest, and powerful, acknowledging that he had not expected that voice, that level of control, that emotional connection, and coming from someone known for brutal honesty. That validation carried immense weight. The other judges followed, praising her authenticity, her tone, her presence, but their words almost faded into the background as the realization settled in. For her, this moment had changed everything. Not necessarily her career yet, but her belief in herself, the quiet certainty that the dreams she had kept alive, in small ways, was real and deserved space. She spoke again, voice trembling slightly as she thanked the judges, the audience, and her students, explaining how teaching had taught her patience, discipline, and empathy, qualities that shaped her music even when she didn't realize it. And that connection between her two worlds touched people deeply, showing that passion doesn't disappear when you choose responsibility. It simply waits. Backstage, she struggled to process what had just happened, hands shaking as she replayed the performance. In her mind, disbelief written across her face as producers congratulated her, cameras capturing her quiet joy, her repeated whispers of gratitude, and her disbelief that Simon Cowell had stood for her. Online, the performance spread rapidly, shared by teachers, students, parents, and dreamers across the world, comments pouring in from people who saw themselves in her story, people who had put dreams on hold, who had chosen practicality over passion and now felt a spark of hope, reignited by her courage. Teachers wrote about singing in empty classrooms after school. Parents shared stories of abandoned hobbies. Workers admitted to talents hidden behind routines. And through it all, her audition became more than entertainment. It became a reminder that dreams do not have expiration dates. They simply wait for permission. Her story resonated because it was honest, not dramatic, not manufactured, but deeply human. It showed that you can live responsibly and still dream boldly, that you can nurture others while still nurturing yourself, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step forward and say, "This matters to me." As the days passed, interviews followed, each one revealing more of her journey, the doubts she battled, the fear of judgment, the belief that it was too late. And each confession made her even more relatable, because greatness is most inspiring when it feels reachable, when it feels like something ordinary people can grow into. She spoke about her students again, how she hoped her performance showed them that dreams don't vanish with age or responsibility, that life doesn't follow a single path, and that sometimes the most meaningful victories come after years of quiet preparation. What made her audition unforgettable wasn't just her voice. It was the courage behind it, the years of restraint, the choice to finally honor herself. And that message lingered long after the applause faded, because it challenged a common belief that we must choose between who we are and who we want to be. Her journey reminds us that labels are not limits unless we accept them. That teacher, singer, dreamer, mentor, these roles can coexist beautifully, enriching each other, shaping a voice that carries both discipline and soul. So if you are watching this and carrying a dream, quietly tucked behind responsibility and routine, remember her. Remember how a simple teacher walked onto a stage and walked away, transformed, not because she became someone new, but because she finally allowed the world to see who she had always been. In the days that followed, she returned to her classroom, the same desk, the same board, the same rows of chairs, yet everything felt subtly different, not because the room had changed, but because she had, her students, noticed it first. The quiet confidence in her walk, the lightness in her smile, the way her voice carried a little more strength. And when they asked her about the stage, about the lights, about Simon Cowell, she didn't boast. She simply smiled and told them that fear feels smaller once you face it. She continued, teaching as she always had. Patient, encouraging, attentive. But now her lessons carried something extra, an inspoken message woven between equations and essays. That dreams are not distractions, they are fuel, and her students felt it because they had seen her stand where courage meets uncertainty and choose not to retreat. At night, alone with her thoughts, she reflected on how close she had come to never auditioning at all. How many times she had almost convinced herself that the risk was unnecessary, that the stage belonged to younger voices, louder personalities, bolder lives, and how easily she could have remained invisible, safe and quietly, unfulfilled, and that realization humbled her more than any applause ever could. She thought about the younger version of herself, the girl who sang freely, without worrying about labels or expectations. The girl who believed talent alone was enough before life taught her about bills, schedules, responsibilities, and compromise. And she wished she could tell that younger self that the dream survives even when hidden, even when delayed, even when doubted. The messages kept arriving from people she had never met, teachers thanking her for representation, parents admitting they had abandoned passions, singers saying they had almost quit. And each message reinforced what she had begun to understand, that her audition had given people permission to reconsider their own limits, to ask themselves whether the life they settled for was the life they truly wanted. She began to realize that success isn't always measured by trophies or contracts. Sometimes it's measured by impact, by the quiet shift in someone's thinking, by the courage sparked in another heart, and knowing that her voice had done that for others gave her a sense of fulfillment, deeper than applause. As she prepared for the next round, doubt still crept in, because courage does not eliminate fear. It teaches you how to walk beside it, and some nights she wondered if the magic would fade, if expectations would rise too high, if she could meet them. But then she remembered that she hadn't stepped onto that stage to become famous. She had stepped onto it to be honest. Each rehearsal became an act of self-trust, a reminder that she did not need to transform herself into something louder or flashier, that her strength lay in authenticity, in storytelling, in emotional truth, the same qualities that had carried her through years of teaching and now carried her through music. She found herself standing taller, speaking more confidently, not just on stage, but in life, Understand that confidence is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is the peace that comes from honoring who you are, and that peace showed in every note she sang. What her journey ultimately revealed was something simple yet powerful. That ordinary lives often carry extraordinary potential, that greatness doesn't always announce itself early, and that the most meaningful transformations happen quietly, slowly over years of patience and perseverance. Her audition became a reminder that timing is not a deadline, that life is not a race, and that comparison steals more dreams than failure ever could. Because while others may arrive early, some arrive ready, and readiness is what lasts. And so her story continues, not defined by one performance, but by a choice, the choice to stop shrinking, to stop waiting, to stop apologizing for wanting more. And in that choice lies a lesson for anyone watching, anyone listening, anyone hesitating on the edge of their own possibility. If there is one truth her journey leaves behind, it is this: the voice you silence does not disappear. It waits patiently, faithfully, and when you finally allow it to be heard, it speaks with the strength of everything it endured in silence.